Listening. In the culture-centered approach, we often talk about the importance of listening to communities at the margins. This emphasis on listening is based on the idea that those that live at the margins have been erased and silenced from dominant platforms. The argument goes somewhat like this. The economic marginalization of communities at the margins is carried out through the silencing and erasure of these communities from those platforms of policymaking where issues are debated about, arguments are configured, and policies are decided and carried out. The idea, therefore, behind listening is to fundamentally challenge these inequities in representation and communication based on the argument that by bringing communities into the forefront, into these discursive spaces, that their erasures are disrupted. And through that process, therefore, policies and programs are created that are responsive to their needs. At a more basic level, listening to communities at the margins also means that we become open to questioning the theories and methodologies that guide us. Because if truly we were to listen to communities at the margins, our basic methodologies would be open to continually being interrogated, to the skepticism of communities as they articulate their own viewpoints with respect to their methodologies, and then being continually reconfigured and redesigned to find alternative modalities of engaging in the production of knowledge. The same kind of argument can also be said about theory building. If we truly listen to communities at the margins, our theories would no longer remain theories that are developed by us academics at the center and then carried out on communities at the margins. Instead, they would emerge as theories that build from local community participation and therefore in that process disrupt the traditional theorizing within dominant structures. As we further build upon the concept of listening in the culture-centered approach, we also learn that in CCA, we often talk about the skepticism that is needed toward the dominant structures and its call for listening. In other words, we need to constantly think about where is the call for listening originating from, what are the agendas and intentionalities that are tied to these calls for listening, and the ways in which perhaps these calls for listening have been framed as rhetorical devices in order to serve the agendas of dominant structures. This kind of skepticism means that we become aware of the co-optive possibilities of the language of listening as it often gets used not to truly listen to the capacities of communities, but rather to utilize communities to serve some dominant agenda. As we increasingly see calls made by the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund, and other international financial institutions toward participation, democracy, dialogue, we continually need to think about what are the agendas that are hidden behind these calls. In truly listening to communities at the margins, we create opportunities for contesting and challenging neoliberalism and the logics of neoliberalism, which therefore do not fit into the dominant agendas of privatization, liberalization of trade, and the building of intellectual property to serve dominant institutions. But rather, listening in this sense then becomes a way for fundamentally questioning the ways in which our societies and worlds are organized, perhaps bringing us to new ways of thinking about what these alternatives can look like.